Okay, hi everybody. Good morning and welcome. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So it's brand new for us, a new series, and we're very excited. It's called For the Love of Learning. And the idea is that every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. on site, one of our rabbis will be teaching one of our favorite sugiot or sections of the Talmud. And we'll do this for the next many months. Really grateful to Rabbi Panitz, Rabbi Jensen, Rabbi Silver for both dreaming this up and also being our teachers. And we'll put out the calendar at some point in the near future so that you can mark it and see who's teaching when and what the sessions will be on. But part of the reason that we really wanted to do this is because we're excited about bringing some regular set learning into this space. We do a lot of good things in the space already, but as we start to think about the building and the next chapter for IKAR, we really want the building to be a place of learning, a Beit Midrash. That's one of the uses of the space and one of the inspirations for it. So we wanted to get in the regular habit of both having people here in person and also having people online. So welcome to all of you who are with us on Zoom. And of course, these sessions will be available later so that people can watch them asynchronously and learn with us that way as well. So I welcome you. We will be here with food, a little bit of food, a little bit of coffee, and some Torah every Tuesday for the foreseeable future. I really want to thank, especially for this first session, a couple of our staff people who worked really hard to pull this together with short notice, as is our way here. First to Ben Cooley, who's here, to Malik Daniels, to Ivy and Kellen, who both worked very hard to do this, and also to Mati Gabrielle. So thank you for all of your help and for being our admin on Zoom. And let's jump into it. So the idea is that we'll do about 45 minutes of learning, and then we'll turn off the Zoom, and the people who are here can schmooze and have coffee, and it'll be a little bit like an open office hour with your rabbis if you'd like to stick around and schmooze for a few minutes afterwards. But we thought a good way to start the day. I would like this morning, when I'm entering into Torah study, I like to think about who are the people in our lives who need our prayers right now. And so I want to start this morning lifting up the names of two people, of Fagi Buckman, the mother of Lauren Buckman, and also Reverend Jesse Jackson, and sending our love and blessings to Ashley Jackson and all of those we love who are navigating illness and also final chapter with their beloveds, and may they feel the strength of community as they do. So into the text. So the text that I chose to start today, when I told my daughter Eva last night that what I was doing, she said, "Of course you chose that text. It's your favorite." So I have many favorites, but this is one of them. And the point of this class is for us to share our favorites. So for longtime IKAR people, you will certainly have heard reference to the texts that we're all choosing, no doubt, but you're going to also experience them in a different way. And I have to tell you that in preparing for this or for this class, I also learned many things that I didn't know before. And so I want to invite us in the spirit of open-hearted Torah study to both know that some people will be encountering these ideas for the first time. Others will have seen this many times, but I hope that something new is awakened in you as you encounter the text today, and we will learn through it together. So the text that I chose is from a tractate of Talmud called Bava Metzia, 84a. And just a quick word of background, the setting here is about 3rd century in the land of Israel. And the two main characters here are the great Rabbi Yohanan and Resh Lakish, two characters of the Talmud who, in part because of this story, became very central to my own engagement with Talmud. And I think several of my sessions in the coming couple of weeks will be focused on either Rabbi Yohanan or Resh Lakish, because their characters are just so interesting. So you should see a running thread for the next couple of weeks. But here's the story. I will walk you through it. So first, it starts with an exposition on the extraordinary beauty, physical beauty of the character of Rabbi Yohanan. And what you'll see in the text here is in bold in the translation. In bold is the direct translation, and then the text that's not in bold is the commentary from Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, which I sometimes adjusted and sometimes took out if I felt it was too much. But that's not actually in the Talmud. That is commentary, and all of these translations are drawn from Sefaria, again with some tweaks of my own. So you can also find them, and we'll also share the Google Doc afterwards if you want to track it there. So this is how the story starts, by talking about Rabbi Yochanan's physical beauty. So Rabbi Yohanan says, I alone remain of the beautiful people of Jerusalem. So presumably there was a time when there were many beautiful people. We're now talking a couple of centuries after the destruction of the temple. And Rabbi Yohanan is staking a claim on being the one remnant of the beautiful people of Jerusalem. And the Gemara goes on to say that if you want to have a sense of how beautiful was Rabbi Yohanan, he was so beautiful that what you would have to do is bring a shiny silver goblet that comes right from the silversmith, a beautiful silver goblet. You'd have to fill it with red pomegranate seeds and then place roses, red roses all around the lip of the goblet, and then take that configuration of silver and natural beauty and place it right in the perfect sunlight between sun and shade. And that luster will give you some small sense of just how beautiful Rabbi Yohanan is. So how beautiful is he? Very, very beautiful. And then the text will go on in order to tell us how people of his time engaged someone of such profound physical beauty. So what Rabbi Yohanan would do is he would go and he would sit by the entrance to the mikveh, to the ritual bath. And he would say to himself, when Jewish women would come up from their immersion in the mikveh, they would encounter me so that they would have beautiful children like me, and they would have learned children like me, okay? So what's going on here? Jewish women were prescribed to not have sex with their husbands during the time of menstruation. That was a period of minimum of 7 days. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. When their period of ritual impurity would end, they would go and immerse in the mikveh, this ritual bath. Then they would emerge and they would go home, and it's mikveh night, baby. They would have sex with their husbands. And so Rabbi Yochanan would position himself at the entrance to the exit to the mikveh, so that when the women would come out, they would see him. And then when they went home and had sex with their husbands, they would be thinking of him and not them. And I want to pause here because I'm curious what you think of this. So anyone who has an idea of what's going on here, please share and introduce yourselves too, if you would share your name. Anyway, I know you have some theories, so let's hear it. Yeah. Is he what? Okay, so Melissa's asking, is he actually having sex with the women before they go home to sleep with their husbands, which is so interesting because how else would the women actually have babies that look like him and think like him unless he's the actual father of those babies? So that's a really interesting, that's an interesting possibility. Great, thank you, Melissa. Another idea? Sipra? Okay, so let's talk about the science, the rabbinic science of what's happening, and let's talk about the psychology of what's happening. Okay, so one possibility is that he's actually sleeping with all of these women, okay? The rabbis, I haven't seen any rabbi suggest that, but I appreciate that that's your first take on this because it does seem a little bit like the pshat, the simple reading of the text. There is some, that was your first thought too, sir. So there is some connection between this story and the story of our ancestor Jacob, who, if you remember, when he was taking leave of Lavan, he was told by Lavan he could only take the sheep that had like certain stripes, and so he would hold the rods up, and the sheep, before they had sheep sex, would look at the rods, and then they would imprint those rods on their sheep babies. And so maybe what you look at or what you're thinking of when you go into that act of conception will end up being imprinted on the baby that comes out from that act. Yours is the more probable explanation, Melissa, I think. But there is some idea that at least if the women are thinking of him, that their babies might come out like him, you might say this is a little problematic. Like, why are we telling these women to think not about their husbands, but to think about Rabbi Yohanan? And I don't think there's a good answer to this, but I will tell you that one of the things we know about mikvah and about the laws of ritual impurity and nidah, and women not being prevented from having sex with their husbands during this period, is that it teaches in the Talmud, Benot Yisrael achmiru al atzman. It says that in the Torah, it says that there's a week of separation, but the women of Israel, they took on an extra stringency. We'll take an extra 7 days. Okay, so why would the women of Israel take on an extra period in which they don't have to have sex with their husbands unless they really didn't want to sleep with their husbands, right? So it seems like, and then there's lots of talk in the Gemara about the professions of their husbands and what they would come home smelling like and what they looked like. And there seems to be some indication that the women of Israel were trying to take some agency upon themselves by distancing from their husbands, except for when they had to. And maybe I just want to suggest part of the reason that Rabbi Yohanan is sitting there is to get the women kind of excited and feeling sexual, because they weren't going to feel that way about their spouses. Yes. And would you introduce yourself?
About this rabbi being, I alone remain for there's this idea of we are of a larger group and we have a mission or a purpose.
Great.
So then I come into this second passage thinking you're going home, you're going to sleep with your husbands, but it's for a larger purpose.
That's so great. I'm going to repeat it just so these folks can hear. So Victoria, right, says that that there's a hint in the previous section that this is the remnant of Israel. Much of Israel was destroyed, right? 1 million people were killed when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, when the temple was destroyed. This is the remnant. It's a tiny core group. By the way, I'm so fascinated by those theories of Jewish history, the bottleneck theories, where like our population dwindled to so small a number and we're all descendants of that remnant. It's possible that the reason that Rabbi Yohanan did this was to be of service to the Jewish people. We've lost so many. These women don't want to sleep with their smelly husbands. This is not my language, but the language that they're tanners and fishermen, and the women are a little bit repelled by it. But if Rabbi Yochanan's there, he's engaged in a service to the Jewish people, either by actually sleeping with the women, or if that's too radical a read, inspiring them to want to procreate with their spouses. So that's one possibility, is that he's really being of service to the Jewish people. Though Sipra raises an interesting question, which is like, isn't it a little bit arrogant? I'm the last remaining beautiful person out there. And when they see me, they're going to want to have sex with their husbands. And maybe then their children will look like me and think like me. Really quickly, RBZ.
The thing that seems to me is usually going into mikvah after the woman's menstrual cycle, they're very prone to get pregnant.
Yes.
So they may not want to have children. So
okay.
Might allow it.
Okay, great. So RBZ is saying that maybe the reason the women took on the extra week was because they did not want to get pregnant, because lots of women died in childbirth and they might have been trying to avoid it. I've also heard and read some people say that that the extra week landed that mikvah night right at the night that they were most likely to conceive. And so it could be that they were also trying to minimize the amount of time that they would have to. This is just my read, folks. We can take it or leave it. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand why Benot Yisrael were hechmiru al atzma, why they took on this extra stringency. If it's okay, I want to keep going. So very quickly, I'm going back to the question Sippa raises of ego. And the rabbis ask the same question. The rabbis say, aren't you worried about the evil eye? Here you think you're so great, you're so beautiful, you're so special that we want to implant the image of you on all the children of Israel. And he says, don't worry, I come from the offspring of Joseph, who the evil eye has no dominion. Okay? And I cut it short a little bit because we don't have 3 hours together, but only one. But essentially, he makes a textual argument that that the evil eye can't touch him. So he can hold this sense of self and he's not going to be impacted by the evil eye. Okay, hold this as a backdrop for the main event. This is when we go into the story of Rabbi Yohanan and Resh Lakish. Okay, so one day Rabbi Yohanan is bathing in the Jordan River. By the way, we've now seen in this story Rabbi Yohanan doing two things with his time. One, sitting outside the mikveh, and two, bathing in the Jordan River. For one of the great sages, he's not spending a lot of time in the Beit Midrash learning, okay? There's a word for this. It's like bitul Torah. He's wasting time that he should be learning, but he's doing these other things. So I'm just, again, like going to plant some seeds and we'll see where we find this. Resh Lakish sees this beautiful Rabbi Yohanan bathing in the river, and Resh Lakish jumps into the Jordan pursuing him. Just to pause for one moment, Resh Lakish is a character that we know from elsewhere in the Talmud, from Masechet Gitin, as a gladiator. He is a rough and tough guy who actually sold himself into being a gladiator. And there's a crazy story of how he frees himself by, he outsmarts and outstrengthens the gladiators, and he's able to free himself. And so he's both strong and he's cunning, and he is not in the world of the Beit Midrash. He's on the other side of history, okay? Resh Lakish sees Rabbi Yohanan and jumps into the water pursuing him, and I'm going to ask you why in a moment. Rabbi Yohanan says to Resh Lakish, while they're both in the water, and presumably Resh Lakish has grabbed him, and Rabbi Yohanan says, you should use your strength for Torah study. And Resh Lakish says, you should use your beauty for women. Okay, so then Rabbi Yohanan says to him, well, if you return to the pursuit of Torah, I will give you my sister, who, don't worry, looks just like me, but even hotter. And Resh Lakish says, okay, it's a deal. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a moment there. It is funny, and the Talmud is funny. I would like to say that at the beginning of this series. The Talmud is funny. What is going on here? Resh Lakish jumps into this tough guy, this violent guy, the leader of the thugs in his time. What is happening in this story? Why is he jumping into the Jordan after Rabbi Yohanan? Yeah, Lisa?
I think he wants to possess that beauty by conquering.
It very much appears that he is trying to rape Rabbi Yohanan, whom he perhaps thinks is a woman, right? He may see Rabbi Yohanan, who, by the way, the rabbis say he had no beard. All the men of the time had a beard, and Rabbi Yohanan did not. And he, from behind, or maybe from the front, appears to Resh Lakish perhaps to be a woman, or perhaps appears to be a man. And Resh Lakish is interested in having sex with this man, right? So it seems very clear that he's going into the water in order to possess him, as Lisa says delicately, in order to have sex with him. And by the way, I listened to and read a lot in preparation for today, and it's just hilarious to see the circles that people will sort of dance in order to avoid saying that very obvious truth. Like I heard one rabbi who said, but if he's a robber and if he's a thief and a tough guy, he's coming to steal stuff, but Rabbi Yohanan's stuff, you don't go into the water with your stuff, you leave your stuff on the shore. So maybe Rabbi Yohanan was drowning and he's jumped into the water to protect him from drowning. I don't think that's what's going on here. I think Resh Lakish wants to have sex with the person who's in the water. Maybe he thinks it's a woman, maybe he thinks it's a man. This is not a guy who's looking for consent. This is a person who's looking to fulfill his own desires or use his power over someone else. And then Rabbi Yohanan is able to stop the violent act by saying, "You're so strong. Imagine if you used your strength for good in the world. Just imagine what you could do and who you could be." I'm going to come back to that in a moment, because what Resh Lakish says to Rabbi Yohanan remains a mystery to me, and I'm curious what you all think. He says, well, your beauty should be for women, and I wonder if anyone has a theory of what he means. Keith?
I was just going to say there's a parallel to what's happening in the Jordan waters and the Mikvah water.
Ooh, okay, that's great. That's great. Water to water. Keith said there's a parallel between what's happening here in the Jordan and what's happening in the mikveh. I mean, there are lots of parallels. First, the nature of the fact that both happen in the water, but also what does it mean to be sleeping with someone while thinking of someone else, and the act of possession or violence, and taking away someone else's agency or personhood in a way. I think that's a great connection. Let me just say, for the sake of time, I don't know exactly what Resh Lakish means when he says your beauty should be for women. I have a few theories. It could be that he is saying to him, why are you swimming in the gay section of the Jordan? Like, why are you at this club if you don't want, like, maybe this is a place where men go who want to be with each other in this way. If you're going to push me away, why don't you go position yourself on the other side where the guys go who are married or who are looking for women. It's just a theory. I think the more obvious read is maybe Resh Lakish is saying to Rabbi Yohanan, you think that I could do better by spending my time with Torah. I think you could do better by spending your time with women. Maybe we go out together and see what we could do on the town, right? There are lots of theories of what's going on here. I'm sure some of you might have some. If you want to share them, you can feel free to tell me afterwards, because it's still an open question to me what it means that Resh Lakish says your beauty is fit for women. He might very simply be saying, like, you're so beautiful, you could be a woman. And I will say that the rabbis talking so much about how very physically beautiful Rabbi Yohanan is, the male rabbis talking about how beautiful another male colleague is, I think raises some interesting and important questions for us about what we talk about and what we're afraid to talk about. So I will leave it there for a moment, though I'm happy to come back to this if people would like to. So he gives over his sister, which a little bit echoes what we just read of Lot offering to the angels. Don't worry, I'll give you my daughter. Just don't hurt, these men. You can have my sister, who's more beautiful than I am. Resh Lakish accepts this deal. He says, okay, I will turn to Torah or return to Torah, which will become relevant in just a moment. And I'll marry your hot sister. So Resh Lakish, they make this deal in the water. And Resh Lakish wants to jump out of the water now and get his stuff, but he has lost his physical strength. He's lost his physical strength. He can no longer swim back to the shore. The moment he accepts Torah, he accepts the life of the mind and the spirit. And that means that his body is of much lesser importance, or at least the rabbis are suggesting that, which I think brings a kind of tension to the forefront between this Greek and Roman ideal of the body and the physical beauty on one side, and this Jewish ideal of the life of the mind and the spirit, except that the entire story challenges that dichotomy by speaking so much about Rabbi Yochanan's physical beauty and speaking so much about sex as it is here. There does seem to be some sense, though, that Jewish men or Rebbeim, serious, Talmidei Chachamim, they're not thinking about the physical aspects of life. They're really focused on the word, even in the face of the example of Rabbi Yohanan, who's precisely not doing that because he's hanging out at the mikveh and in the water, and he's so beautiful, and he's hypersexualized and physicalized in the text. So somehow he's lost his ability to study Torah, but he makes it, his ability to swim back to the shore. He makes it to the shore, don't worry. There's a wedding. He gets married to Rabbi Yochanan's sister. And these two guys become hevruta, bar plugta. They become partners in learning. And I said that I would come back to the turn or return to Torah that Rabbi Yohanan says to Resh Lakish, when he says to him, if you, it says, ihadrat bach, if you come back to Torah, not if you go to, if you come to Torah, but if you come back to Torah, which I think could mean two different things. It could be the way that every person who comes to Torah, it's like a coming home to Torah. Or it could be like Rabbeinu Tam suggests, that actually Resh Lakish was a Torah scholar, and then he went off the derech. He went in a different way, and he became a gladiator and a rapist and a thief and like he went to the other side, and now he's coming back to Torah. Just hold that in mind as we go into the next piece of the story. So the two of them sit together in the Beit Midrash, and Rabbi Yohanan teaches Resh Lakish Torah. He teaches him Bible and he teaches him Mishnah. He teaches him these two essential elements of learning that would make him a learned man, and it turns him into a Gavra Rabbah, into a great man. Okay. Now, one day, these men are in the Beit Midrash, they're in the study hall, and they are engaged machloket, in a dispute. And the dispute is about the following. They are asking the question, just like one word of background so we understand the dispute that they're having. So according to the halakha, according to rabbinic law, an object is only susceptible to contamination once it's fully finished in its form. So if you're in the process of building something, it can't be contaminated, but once it is fully formed, it is susceptible to contamination. So the question that they're going to ask is, at what point is something fully formed, right? When is it a work in progress, and when is it fully formed? And they're asking it not just about any object, but about these objects: the sword, the knife, the dagger, the spear, the hand sickle, and the harvest sickle. When did those things become susceptible to ritual impurity? The answer is at the time that they're done being manufactured, just like everything else that's made of iron, for example. They only become susceptible to impurity once they're done. But that raises a question. When is something done? When is it finalized and in its final form? And here we'll see the machloket, the dispute between Rabbi Yohanan and Resh Lakish. Rabbi Yohanan says the thing is done when one fires the items in a furnace, right? That's what you have to do to iron in order for it to stabilize and harden and into its final form. But Resh Lakish says, no. After it comes out of the fire, it immerses in water, Keith. It immerses in water, and in the water is where it becomes its final form. More water. And so they are having a halachic dispute, except it's really a halachic dispute that we already know the answer to. Because in the Mishnah, in Kalim, we know that a sword becomes susceptible to ritual impurity when it has been polished and when it has been sharpened not when it goes into the fire, but after the entire process is over. So this is like for our potters out there, like it's not a pot when it's been bisque fired. It still needs to be glazed and then it needs to be fired again. And it's not even a pot, according to Resh Lakish, when it's been glazed fired until you polish it and you finish it. You got to get the little pieces of, stuck clay from the bottom of it, and then you can give it as a gift. You don't give it as a gift until you finalize it, right? But here, they're asking a question that they already know the answer to. There's no way Rabbi Yohanan doesn't know this answer. But Rabbi Yohanan says it's got to be the moment of the firing, not the moment of the immersion. And Resh Lakish says it's the moment of the immersion, which is after the moment of firing. Hannah, do you have a theory?
Well, I kind of feel like it's like, obviously it represents it. Well, to me, it represents it, like comes out of the water. Yeah. And then he's smacked down after that.
Hannah's saying it obviously for Resh Lakish, it represents him. He's the one who immersed in the water and was transformed by the water. So what happens to somebody who's hearing Rabbi Yochanan's view, which is you are who you are the moment you go into the fire, not in the transformation later, when you believe that your own transformation occurred literally in the water. Like I became a new person. I was out there robbing and thieving and committing acts of violence. And then I was transformed by the water. But my teacher, my beloved, my brother-in-law, my best friend, my bar plukta, my hevruta says that transformation doesn't even matter because you were formed who you were in the fire. Maybe in the fire of that fight with the gladiators, maybe in the fire of all your violent attacks before your attempted violent attack on me, right? So Resh Lakish feels completely undone by Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation here. And here, I'm just going to say, like, I learned this, early on in the rabbinate. When a couple comes to you and says they're arguing about something, it's almost never about the thing that they're arguing about, right? Like, it's never about the kashrut of the kitchen. It's about, do we honor each other's backstories? Like, do we honor each other's agency? And so what's actually going on here is not at all a fight about a sword and a spear and a sickle and when it becomes susceptible to contamination. What's going on here is at what point is something formed and it is what it is. And Rabbi Yohanan says, you are what you are at the moment of the fire, meaning Resh Lakish, you are what you were. And Resh Lakish says, no. We're always changing. We're always growing. I made tshuva. I transformed myself. But if you can't see my tshuva because you don't think that that change is legitimate because I'll always be who I was before the water to you, then that breaks my heart. And here, we have Rabbi Yohanan then responds to this argument that the two of them are having in front of, by the way, the whole school. Rabbi Yohanan responds saying, well, you should know, a bandit knows his banditry. Who's going to know about tools of violence? You, the one who used those tools for violence, which is, again, reinforcing in an explicit way what he was just saying in a metaphorical way, which is you will always be a bandit to me, right? Yes.
I was wondering if like two things could be true, such as like that is who he is, but also the transformation is also who he is. So like kind of like states of water, they transform, but they're still water. So like you can change and like at different points of your life be a different person, but still like innately be you. And then like that's him coming back to Torah as well.
So Kayla, just to repeat for the folks who are with us from home, Kayla saying, is it possible to be two things at once? That even water itself transforms itself, but into different states, but it's still fundamentally water. And so, is it possible for both of them to be right? And here, I'll just very quickly say, think of the difference between a piece of iron and a body of water. and that iron is like, it is formed, it is solid, it's dense, and water is always moving. And Torah is called Mayim Chayim because it's fluid and it can become something different than it was before. I think it's a great question. Thank you for raising it. Okay, very quickly, Scott.
The furnace and the pool remind me of when our daughters were born, when they were days old. We saw their traits as human beings that carry through. They're in their 40s, you know, they carry through to this day. So they had innate traits from the day they were born.
Yeah, great.
Evolved.
Okay, so this might be the way to actually address Kayla's question, which is, can it be true that you are who you are and you can also change? Can both things be true? And I also saw that in my kids. Like, we saw who they were very early on. And remember that Resh Lakish, as a Talmid Chacham, as a student of Torah, is fundamentally the same person, that he's using the same tools that he used. All of his strength is what he uses for Torah. He's not letting go of his strength, his physical strength. Yes, he's transforming it into a spiritual strength, but he's morphing it into something else. I think that's a beautiful rejoinder to Kayla's point. Okay, I'm going to take one more, and just so that we can go on, because our time is a little short. Sorry.
I just wanted to say, in addition to what, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Taylor said, all those things they're talking about become useless when they are not sharp anymore. And so they go back, depending on the tradition you come from, they go back in the water to be straightened, or they're on a stone. It's not an iron stone, but it's still stone. And I don't know exactly what that.
It's good, and it's going to become, I'm going to bring us to that in just a moment. It's such a great point, which is that at some point, iron tools and even like weapons, and think of your kitchen knives, they dull and they have to be sharpened. And how do we sharpen knives? By rubbing iron against iron, right? That's how you send them away to get sharpened. And that's what they're doing to them, which is a metaphor for the Beit Midrash also. That how do we sharpen our ideas? By rubbing iron against iron. And we'll come to this in just a moment, when we try to understand a little bit more about the dynamic between these two. If it's okay, I'm going to keep going, just for the sake of our time. So do you see where I am in text 4? So after Rabbi Yohanan says to Resh Lakish, you should know, because you're the one who knows about weaponry, because in my mind, you will always be who you were out there. And then Resh Lakish says to Rabbi Yohanan, so why am I even here then? What benefit did you provide me? Like, out there in the world, I was called Rebbe. I was the master of thieves. And here I'm called Rebbe. I'm the master of Torah. But what's the difference? Like, I didn't need to come here and give myself over to study and Torah and learning if all I'm going to be, like, the whole point of my transformation was that transformation is possible. But if I'm always going to be who I was to you, I should have just stayed out there. What was even the point of all this? And Rabbi Yohanan responds to him saying, I brought you close to God. That's what I did for you. How dare you say to me, what was the point of all this? Like, what I gave you, what you're used to counting value and in what you steal from people, the jewels, the money, the assaults. But what I gave you is more than anything tangible. I gave you the divine presence. So how dare you say that these things are even comparable? You can see that something very painful is happening between these two men. And I want to just have us consider for a moment the ways in which the people we love the most can hurt us the most, because they know our vulnerabilities. And I don't know what happened between Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yohanan in between their falling in love story, where they're in the Beit Midrash every day arguing like iron against iron, like sword against sword. And then all of a sudden, Rabbi Yohanan says, you'll never be everything to me. I can only imagine the sister has something to do with this and what it means to sublimate one's own desires through their sister. Like, who knows? I mean, it seems to me like these two have fallen in love, and because they can't marry, the sister, who looks just like Rabbi Yohanan, gets to marry Resh Lakish. But who's Resh Lakish spending all his time with? The brother in the Beit Midrash. And it's hard. It's hard to sublimate your like all of your feelings of love toward another person and then send them home to your sister who you also love, but why should she get to have a life with him and not you? It's complicated. It's really painful stuff. There's no way to my read that this is not a love story. And there's no way that if Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yohanan, if they lived in our day, that they wouldn't have married each other, right? That they wouldn't have had to marry the sister who looks like me. They would have married each other, but they couldn't. And maybe that's what leads to the kind of angsty, painful acting out that we see in this narrative. Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, he seems very conflicted, Rabbi Yohanan.
Yes.
And what was interesting, we were talking earlier about the question of when are these objects finished, but it's also the question of when are these objects impure. And for Rabbi Yohanan, it was the conflict over a sense of impurity when by the time he was in the water, he was subject to what he interpreted as impurity.
Oh. Wow. Okay. That's great. That's great, Stuart. Thank you. It's not just about, it's actually about impurity and Rabbi Yochanan's own sense of maybe he had become impure by whatever happened or didn't happen, and he might have wanted to happen in the water with Resh Lakish in the first place. I think that's a really good read. I want to quickly interject for a moment and have you look down at Bava Metzia, at text number 5, Bava Metzia 58b, and just introduce one idea, which is the idea of onat devarim, the idea of deception through words, that there is a category of harm that one can do to another, not by taking their money, but by using words in a harmful way. And one of the examples of the way that we use harm through words is like you walk into a store and you engage the salesperson about an item in the store that you have no intention of buying because you know you're going to go home and buy it for cheaper on Amazon. And so you're actually engaging in an act of deception because that person's livelihood is based on selling it to you, and they're doing it in good faith. And then you know you're never going to buy it there. And so that's one version of what onat devarim is. And another is saying to someone who's converted to Judaism, you're just a convert. Remember, I know your parents, I know your grandparents, I know that you don't actually belong here. Now, when someone converts to Judaism, they do belong here. They become Bat Avraham V'Sara, or Ben Avraham, or Bnei Avraham V'Sara. They are the children of Abraham and Sarah because they are as much a Jew as someone who can trace their lineage 16 generations. So when you say to someone, oh, but you're just a convert, you are undermining their core sense of identity. What happens to them in the water, in the mikveh? That's how a person, finishes the act of conversion. And we're saying you've been transformed. But if you then go to a person saying, you're not a real Jew, I know your parents, you are undermining that transformation that happened in the water. And the prime example of that is saying to a convert, and this is a category of harm that one can do to another. And I just want to bring this to you for a second, but look at text number 6. I'm back at Bava Metzia 58b here, where we're learning about onat devarim. This is a parenthetical, but I think an important one. Rabbi Yohanan says, in the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it's worse to verbally mistreat someone than even to steal their money. The worst thing you can do to a person is to engage in onat devarim. Better to take my money than to take my dignity. Look, and the prime example of taking my dignity is saying to a convert, you are who you were before. Look who says that. Who's the rabbi who teaches that? Somebody say it. It's Rabbi Yohanan himself. Rabbi Yohanan himself, earlier in the Gemara, is the one who teaches that one of the worst things you can do to a person is to take away their dignity by reminding them of what they were before. And that is precisely what Rabbi Yohanan does to Resh Lakish here. He's undermining his own teaching about how we honor the other. And he's doing it to the person he probably loves most in the world, his best friend, his hevruta, his partner, to Resh Lakish. When this episode happens, Rabbi Yohanan grows weak. He physically, remember, there's a kind of depth of awareness and knowledge that once you take it on, your body gets weak, so weak that Resh Lakish could not swim to the shore. when Rabbi Yohanan entered this depth of awareness, he grew weak. He grew sick. And when Rabbi Yohanan grew sick, Resh Lakish grew sick. And Resh Lakish grew deathly ill. So this happens when you're in a fight with someone you love and you just like, it takes everything out of you. They grew ill. They both grew ill from this. Resh Lakish was more ill than Rabbi Yohanan. Now the sister of Rabbi Yohanan, the wife of Resh Lakish, goes to her brother and she's crying and she's saying, listen, my guy's gonna die because of some stupid fight that you had in the Beit Midrash. Please just make up and make it better. And Rabbi Yohanan said, because she says, don't do it, if you don't do it for me, do it for the sake of the kids. And Rabbi Yohanan says, your kids will be fine, I'll take care of them. Like, think of the level of insensitivity that Rabbi Yohanan now holding to his own nieces and nephews, right? They're gonna be fine if their father dies. What he did to me is so bad. And then she says, fine, but what about me? Like, I'm gonna be a widow. And he's like, you'll be fine. God will take care of you. It's really quite cruel. And so Resh Lakish dies. Here I want to say that we planned this series to be 45 minutes of text, and then we were going to hang out for 15, and I'm over time. But we're just getting used to the model. So we're going to keep going. I can't stop you in the story here. So we're going to keep going, and forgive me, we'll find our schmooze time after. Resh Lakish dies. He dies from grief. He dies because his life was transformed by a teacher. Did anyone ever have a teacher who let you down? Like a mentor who's just not who you thought he was? I mean, that is a painful place to live. And for him, it was all that and so much more, because it wasn't just his mentor, his teacher, it was his rabbi. It was also his best friend, and also, I think, the love of his life. And he's devastated by him, and he dies. And once he dies, Rabbi Yohanan is in great pain because he's just lost his own beloved. And the rabbis are really worried about him. And they, who's going to go help him? Somebody, we got to go help him. He's what's it called? Inconsolable. And so they decide that they're going to send Rabbi Elazar ben Padat, who's a young, handsome, sharp rabbi, who's going to go, and they say his statements are sharp in the text. It kind of indicates he's also a little attractive himself. This is the Beit Midrash, after all, and who's going to go and he'll step into the role of Resh Lakish. So they're going to, we're going to take his mind, Rabbi Yochanan's mind, off of the loss of Resh Lakish by bringing another handsome young guy in front of him who's going to become his new bar plukta hevruta. Okay. So Rabbi Elazar ben Padat goes, and this poor sweet guy, like, he really steps into it because he goes and Rabbi Yohanan is trying to teach Torah, and he's got no energy left in him, and he shares an idea. And Rabbi Elazar ben Padat is so eager, and he's like, oh, I love that idea. That's so brilliant. It's so wise. And by the way, there's a breita, there's a text that supports what you're saying. Everything that the teacher says, the student is like, yes, that's genius. That's so brilliant. And finally, Rabbi Yohanan can't take it anymore. And he says, you're supposed to take the place of Resh Lakish. Seriously? You, Elazar ben Padat? He says, with Resh Lakish, whenever I would say anything, he would raise 24 challenges to everything that I would say. Imagine how annoying this is. Like, you're just trying to teach something, and there's one guy who keeps raising his hand and like won't let you get to the next place. 24 times he would challenge everything that I say, and I would have to answer each one. And I would give 24 different answers. And when that happened, the halakha itself would be broadened. The world of Torah grew more capacious because of this challenge and response, because of iron sharpening with iron, right? When he would bring his strength to meet my strength, together we would strengthen each other, and we would strengthen and broaden the world of Torah. But that's not happening here. All you're doing is telling me that everything I'm saying is right. I already know I'm right. I don't need you to tell me that I'm right. And from this, I'll just finish the story. Rabbi Yohanan now tears his clothing. He does kriya for his beloved Resh Lakish, who has died. There will be no replacement. There's no replacement puppy for this puppy. And so he goes around, he tears his garments. It's a forever loss. And he says, where are you, Resh Lakish? Hecha ad bar Lakisha. Where are you? Where are you, Resh Lakish? And he's screaming and he's crying and he loses his mind. Remember, he started this fight, right? Rabbi Yohanan started this fight, but he can't take it back now. And he loses his mind. And the rabbis pray to God, just let him die already, right? Spare him the agony of continued life. And he dies. And that's the story, okay? And he dies. Now, why don't the rabbis pray for his recovery? Why don't they pray, may one of us be worthy of going to sit with Rabbi Yohanan and one day being his, his new Resh Lakish? Because there's no other Resh Lakish. Because once you've experienced that kind of love, that nobody's going to compare to that. And he understands that. The rabbis understand that. What these two had was so deep and so meaningful, and it was like eternal. And so when he died, there was nobody else who could take his place. And so as a result, the only thing to do is to save him from his agony by actually letting him die. There's a lot to say here, but I wanted to just invite us to take a deep breath for a moment. I think what the rabbis are trying to teach us in this story is that some of us at some point in our lives might be blessed to have maybe an unexpected sacred encounter with another that is so profound that it actually changes us forever. And that is what happened to these two men. They were changed forever by the relationship, by the depth of the love, by the depth of the connection. And I put just a small excerpt here from IKAR, which I shared with some of you on Shavuot, this beautiful book from John O'Donohue. The IKAR is the soul friend. It's someone who creates in you a sense of recognition and belonging. Someone who sees in you your truest self. And in the Gaelic tradition and in the Celtic church, this was the person who you would confess to, because the only person you could be truly, this is like your therapist in our realm, or maybe your rabbi, right? But the person who you feel you can be fully honest with, because you can't even tell your best friend, your sibling, your partner, whatever, and then they know a part of you. And once they know a part of you, you are able to become yourself. Because you knowing a part of you is important, but until another knows you, you can't actually feel a sense of belonging in this world. To be accepted just as the one you are in this world by someone, even if you're paying them to accept you that way, right? In the case of the therapist, it's literally their job to see you in that way. And look at the last paragraph, the second to last of John O'Donohue. He says, in the Celtic tradition, it's not a metaphor. It's not some ideal. It altered the meaning of identity and perception. Once your affection is kindled, the world of your intellect takes on a new tenderness, a new compassion. You look and you see and you understand the whole world differently. This could be disruptive and awkward and hard in the beginning. Like, to be seen that deeply is absolutely terrifying. But gradually, it ends up refining your sensibility. And it transforms you to know that you're seen fully and I'm not running away. I see you just as you are, and that changes you. And he says, a friend is a loved one who awakens your life in order to free the wild possibilities within you. That is what Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yohanan achieved with each other. And that's what Rabbi Yohanan undermined when he said, all those wild possibilities that have been awakened by our love, they're not real. What's real is what you did before with the gladiators. What's real is all those acts of violence. Rabbi Yohanan is not just challenging Resh Lakish now, he's challenging every Baal Tshuva, every penitent, every person who's ever screwed up and done the work to transform themselves. And Rabbi Yohanan saying, it's not good enough, you'll never be. And he dies for that. He dies for that mistake. Because what he doesn't realize is that love itself is the transformational agent here. That love itself is what makes a person able to become something different than what they were before. And I'm going to bring you back for a moment to the text about the evil eye that Sipra keyed into on text number 2. Rabbi Yohanan believes that he cannot be touched by harm in this world. He can have as much ego as he wants. He can have as much beauty. He can swim on the other side of the rope if he wants to go play in that world. Rabbi Yohanan can't be harmed because he comes from he's a descendant of Yosef, and Yosef the evil eye has no dominion over him. But here the evil eye catches up to him, right? And I think there's something powerful about the suggestion that love created in him a kind of vulnerability that he did not possess before, that maybe he couldn't have been harmed before, but when he opened himself up to love, he was able to be harmed to this level. And so what I'm proposing to us is that it is love that makes us vulnerable, and it is also love that makes us great. And that greatness can only be achieved through that vulnerability. But we have to be very, very careful with what we do when we are loved and when we love, because great harm can come and great beauty can come. And ultimately, I think that's why Buber says that the I can only truly become itself in relationship to the thou, that we can only fully become when we are able to see. And we have to recognize that there's a cost to that. There's a cost to, it means we're shedding some of our carapace, is that how we say it? Like some of our tough outer shell, we have to shed in order to let some of the light in. And that means that we're vulnerable in a way that we weren't before. And maybe if we listen to the wisdom of John O'Donohue, we allow ourselves to grow in tenderness, because without our outer shell, we could be deeply, deeply harmed. And so we grow toward one another with a kind of softness that one would treat another, because we don't want to live beneath our armor all the time. We want to put away the iron and live in the world of water. So with that, I'm going to stop because I went over time. But I do want to invite us, and I'm sorry we don't have any time for discussion right now. But I would love for us to close our learning each day with Kaddish de Rabbanan, which is a version of the Kaddish that adds a paragraph for students of Torah. And I want to ask if anyone here is grieving the death of a loved one who is actually saying Kaddish. And Lisa, will you tell us the name of the person you're grieving?
My mom,
Your mother. And what's her name?
Lois, who saw me in the decision.
In memory of Lois, Lisa's mother. Lisa, I'll invite you to rise with me and anyone else who's grieving. And the words are here. And if there's an unfamiliar paragraph in the middle, it will grow familiar to us over the course of time as we learn together. And the work of everyone else, as we know, is to say Amen, 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 Amen. Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah. V'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich machutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agalat u'vizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitala v'yitalal shmei dekudsha richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata de'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Talmidehon ve'al kol Talmidehon ve'al kol ma'an daskim ba'oraita diva atra hadein v'diva chol atar v'atar yehei lahon u'lechon shlama rabachina v'chista v'rachamin v'chayin arichinu b'zonei revichei u'forkana min kadam avohondi v'shmaya v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'mramav hu ya'asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. I bless us all. We should be tender to one another and look toward one another with the possibility of love, each one of us in our own hearts. And thank you so much for learning together. We are going to be doing this, as I said, Tuesday mornings between 9 and 10 a.m., except over break. And we'll continue to put out the information. Again, a special thank you to our wonderful team, staff that put this together. And I will share that we do have a learning tonight with Rabbi Adina Allen in this very space, who created the Jewish Studio Project, and we'll be doing learning, talking about her new book, and also making art together. So another beautiful way to learn. And thank you for being here today. Thanks, everyone.